well, not contemplating, we will be having a Meet the Candidate event. Not a big fancy one in the casino. It will probably be down at our courtyard where I think we have the date of Saturday, the first Saturday. The time hasn't been settled and all of the details the board is working out. And anyone who wants to work on that committee, the board would love your help to help us on that. And I will, once the board gives me permission, I will immediately send out all the invitations to every Republican candidate. So talking about that, we've had some of our favorites didn't win. And some of us feel angry about their non-favorites. I'm just going to tell you this as a Republican, as the president here, and as the second vice chair. We vote for Republicans. Yep. Take that, use that, and leaving a blank is voting for a Democrat. Just remember that. Everybody has their own choice, but I have been asked, I know Betty, I have been asked to bring forth that message from Kathleen from the Pima GOP. And she again just asked me this morning, she called me something, she just said, please tell your members thank you so much, and thank the PCs, you worked really hard. And with that, is Bobby.
Okay, we're gonna talk a little bit this morning about our court system. As you folks sit here today, you are under the jurisdiction of two systems of court. You're under the federal system and you're under the state of Arizona system. So let's look at that a minute. And because a lot of people get them mixed up. In the U.S. federal system, you have one Supreme Court, sits in Washington, D.C. Underneath the U.S. Supreme Court are 13 courts of appeals. They handle all the appeals coming up from the trial court. Now, what circuit do we live in here in Tucson?
Ninth Circuit.
That's right. All right, Angie, since you had your hand up,
Yes.
what is the most conservative circuit in the federal system of appeals?
Fifth?
Yes.
Wow.
Very good.
And she's very small.
Give her a star. Okay. What's the most liberal circuit?
Nice.
2 stars, Angie. Okay. Okay. We're in the 9th Circuit, which is in San Francisco. It is the most liberal court of appeals under the federal system. The most conservative Court of Appeals is the 5th Circuit out of New Orleans. And they'll have a case that may have the same facts. If it goes to San Francisco and it goes to New Orleans, they'll come up with a different decision. It happens all the time. So that's why we have a Supreme Court, because automatically they have to hear that case and decide it, because they can't have the circuits going different ways on the law. And so they'll take a dispute between the circuit courts of appeals, and they'll issue a final ruling, which becomes the law of the land. Now, there are 94 district courts. Now this is where the trials are. They don't have trials. The only trial they can have in the U.S. Supreme Court is for what?
Justices.
Treason.
For treason.
If you get charged with treason, you're going to the U.S. Supreme Court to be tried. That's why they keep trying to get Trump in there and try him for treason. Anyway, there's 94 district courts. Now, we've all heard that those judges are appointed for life. Well, that's not what the Constitution says. The Constitution says the federal judges, and this includes all the federal judges, are appointed for good conduct. And that's been interpreted to mean basically they're there until they do something really bad, and then they can be impeached. It takes the same process to impeach a federal judge as it does to impeach the United States president. you have to go through Congress and through Senate, so it's virtually impossible. Now, there was a lady judge, federal judge, the other day that finally resigned at 92 years old.
Oh, my goodness.
And she was still functioning, she was still intelligent, but the younger judges and the supervising judges wanted her to get out of office. And it's kind of sad that a 92-year-old woman would even want to work full time. But anyway, she did. And as far as I know, was a good judge. Okay. And of course, we've talked about the fact that they're appointed for life or during good behavior. Yes, sir.
Who appoints the judges?
Usually the President of the United States.
All the way down to the
Yes,
district
all the
court
way
level?
down. And if you've ever been in the legal business, you can always tell when a lawyer is shooting for a district judge appointment because he starts contributing a lot of money. So if you want to get considered by the President of the United States, you better have a history of making some substantial donations to that particular candidate. That's the way it is. Anyway, now let's look at the Arizona court system. We have one Supreme Court that sits in Phoenix. Now we only have two courts of appeal, one in Tucson and one in Phoenix. Basically, Arizona is cut in half. Everything from about Casa Grande to the Mexican border is handled by the Tucson Court of Appeals. And everything above Casa Grande all the way to Colorado or whatever is handled by the Phoenix Court of Appeals. Now, the trial courts are called superior courts. Now, I don't know why they call them superior courts because they're just trial courts, but they do. They call the federal trial court district court, but they call the Arizona trial court superior court. So if you hear of a case in superior court, it's not superior to these, it's simply the trial court.
Trial court.
Now, underneath the superior court, we have the justice courts. And justice courts handle a lot of cases in Arizona, as you know. You get a DUI or you get a drug arrest, you're going to justice court, and so forth and so on.
You beat your wife, rape your
Yeah, domestic violence, the justice of the people jurisdiction, and so forth and so on. Now, I want to tell you some interesting facts. Back in the late 60s and the early 1970s, yes, sir, John?
Yeah, going back to the federal side, you see on TV the senators interviewing these different judges to get a lifetime appointment.
Yeah. They have to be affirmed by the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with the president is the one who appoints them?
Well, for example, Trump is the president right now, and if he appoints a lawyer to be a prospective federal judge, that lawyer has to go before the U.S. Senate,
Okay.
and they interview him, and they decide whether or not they're going to approve of him by a majority vote. And same way with the U.S. Supreme Court. If Trump recommends a lawyer to the U.S. Supreme Court, it has to be affirmed by the Senate. If it doesn't get affirmed, it doesn't go. And some of the messiest, nastiest trials you've ever seen have been before the Senate, or over a Supreme Court judge. Anybody remember the controversy involving, yes?
Clarence Thomas?
Pardon?
Clarence Thomas?
Clarence Thomas, classic case, accused of sexual harassment
Horrible.
of a co-worker, a young female clerk. And they had a war in the U.S. Senate. And it went on forever. Everybody got so sick of hearing about this controversy. It was almost like the O.J. Simpson trial. It just went on and on. Anyway, the Senate finally just affirmed it. And he's now on the court and has been on the court. And he's, of course, one of Trump's biggest backers, there's no question about it. He is a strict constructionist of the U.S. Constitution. Anyway, now, going back to what I started to say, in the late 1960s and the early 1970s, we didn't have any homeless people on the street.
Nope.
We didn't have these homeless camps in the parks and on street corners and under bridges and so forth. And you know why? Because I was in law school back then, and I used to do the ride around with the local cops. And because if you were on the street with nothing to do and you were just wandering around, you ended up in the local jail.
Yeah, right.
Because all of the cities and all of the counties had an ordinance against vagrancy, against loitering. And that all started changing back in 1971. A case came out of Ohio, went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, where they challenged the loitering ordinance. And loitering was defined as wandering or strolling around from place to place without any lawful purpose. That was loitering. And if you did that, and you did it to the point where people got annoyed, you're going to local jail for loitering. And then it got to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they said, no, that's a violation of the Constitution. If you want to loiter and walk and wander around on a street corner, that's your business. And they struck it down. And so the cities and the counties had to do away with that ordinance. So another case came up in 1972 involving vagrancy. That's where 2 or 3 people assemble and act in an annoying manner and bother passersby. And the court said, well, that's the exercise of their freedom of speech.
Oh, great. Oh.
And they threw out all of the vagrancy and all of the loitering ordinances all across the USA.
Wow.
And that changed our whole society.
What year was that?
It started in 1971,
And then 72.
and the last case that they decided was in 1972. And that was the end of vagrancy and loitering.
So where do riots fit into that?
Riots?
Yeah, there's more than
Well,
2 or 3.
a riot's a riot, you know.
No, if I have 2 or 3 and they're out there causing problems, that's not considered something that's offensible?
Well, you know,
Well,
it's a
I
judgment
don't
call.
know.
A riot's usually violent.
Yeah,
You've got a couple
yeah.
of
Okay,
bones
use
on
a
the street.
different
Megan.
people. Use a
If
different
you're,
word
if you're
then,
threatening
you know.
people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or you're physically involved with them,
Yes.
that could be a riot.
Oh, do you know if you go to Durango, Colorado, they don't have homeless people, they're unhoused.
That's right.
Of course.
Huron County is using the same term.
I was shocked.
Unhoused.
We were in a store, we had a lovely vacation with the Pollocks, and we were in a store. We were in a store every day. And this gal was just like, we feel the love. Our people are unhoused, and we feel the love. The money, love.
Yeah, it's a different environment. And,
Soft on crime.
of course, Colorado just passed a whole bunch of new gun restrictions. So,
Back on this question of federal or state, what determines where a case goes, whether it goes to the state systems or the federal system? And
Well,
there
it depends
also-
on, good question. It depends on which trial court it's in.
Yep.
If it was in a state trial court, if it involves a federal question, it can go straight into the federal courts. But if it's just strictly state law, then it stays in the state system. And
Does the filing lawyer just make that decision, or who decides that?
well, when they go into a trial, they know where they're going. And I'm trying to think of an example.
Well, it depends on which law they broke.
Yeah, exactly. You know.
State law or a federal law.
Yeah, and now the state courts have the right to enforce federal laws. So if you want to file a lawsuit for discrimination, for example, against the Civil Rights Act, say you're disabled, you have a disability, and your next door neighbor or somebody is doing something to make your life miserable because of your disability. And you can file a federal lawsuit against him for violating your rights under the Disability Act, which is a federal act. But you can file it in the Superior Court of Arizona, and they'll try it. Or you can file it, now, if you file it in the federal court, you have to build your whole case around that federal statute. So it limits you. So a lot of times you just want to stay in the state courts because the state courts don't limit you to just state law. You can use state law and federal law. But if you're in the federal courts, you better have a federal statute that you're arguing about because they don't want to hear state cases. Now, the only time the federal courts get involved in state cases is when you have what they call diversity of citizenship. If you're from California and you're driving through Arizona and you have a car wreck, and the person that caused the wreck is an Arizona citizen, and you go back to California, you can file suit in federal court in California against the resident of Green Valley based on diversity of citizenship. You have citizens in 2 states. And then that gives the federal court there, you have to file it in federal court. That federal court has jurisdiction if the controversy is between a person or another state. So if you live in Arizona and you want to sue California, you can go to federal court because you're suing another state. Good.
Now, in your example, would the Arizona citizen be extradited to California?
No, it's a civil case.
Oh, okay.
Let's keep in mind, you have criminal cases and then you have civil cases.
So this is civil.
In a criminal case, if somebody's in California, but there's a warrant out of Arizona, Arizona can extradite him back from California and bring him back. Same way if you're overseas, if there's a treaty. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I just heard of a case, a gentleman in March here at Continental and I-19 had a yard sale, and he brandished a gun,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it went off, and people
I
were
saw
hurt, and then he left,
I
and now he's
saw
been
that.
extradited back.
I can't believe they did that.
I know it.
I can't believe they extradited him back. He stepped on somebody's toe.
Yeah.
I mean, that is really stretching it. Yeah, that's really a stretch. Usually, in actual practice, a state usually will not extradite someone for a misdemeanor. In other words, if you get a DUI here, and I'm not giving any ideas, if you get a DUI here in Green Valley, you say, I'm going to California, or I'm going to New Mexico, they're not going to extradite you back on a DUI, but you better stay out of Arizona. But if you kill somebody in a car wreck, and they get you for a negligent homicide, then yes, they'll extradite you back for felony. Yes, ma'am.
Can an Arizona case make it to the Supreme Court in the federal system?
If it's a federal question.
No, but not if it's just a state question.
You have to have, in order to get a case out of state court into federal court, there has to be a federal issue. Unless it deals with a federal statute, which is a federal issue. So
Didn't Mr.
that's it.
Chilson, wasn't his like a federal court case?
I'm
Mr.
sorry, Dave.
Chilson?
The one with, in Payson, that shot the man with the dog, the whole dog issue and everything
Oh,
else.
the stand your ground case? Is that the one you're
That's
talking
not the
about?
one I was thinking of.
Yeah, it went all the way to
I'm
the,
I'm thinking of Jim Chilton. Chilton?
The
Yeah,
rancher, the rancher on the southern border.
well,
Wasn't
the
there a
fact that
case there
Arizona
that he
is
won?
is a stand your ground state where if you feel like you're threatened, you don't have a duty to retreat.
Okay.
That's what that means. You can stand and fight or whatever you
Oh,
need to do.
she's talking about the Sue and Jim Chilton,
What?
the rancher in Aravaca.
Oh, Aravaca, what was that
And it was
about?
on immigration on his properties. And
Well,
I
they
think
got
he
shot.
sued, and I think he won his case.
Yes.
Oh,
with
you're
the
talking about the
federal
one that
government.
was charged with murder?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had a jury trial and the jury acquitted
No,
him.
that's a
That
different
was
one.
a different rancher. He didn't murder anybody. He just found a bunch of bodies on his property. It was a body.
You know Jill Chilton, the guy, the rancher and his little wife Sue, they live on Aravaca, and they came in here and they showed the videos like they were having before President Trump came back into office, like 20, 30 illegals. He went to court, he spent a whole bunch of money, but I don't think I thought that his wasn't just on the illegals. I thought it had to do with his property.
His property was
His property
destroyed too,
line.
yeah.
But I didn't think that was a federal court case, I'm not sure.
It probably wasn't, no.
But before you conclude with today, could you touch slightly on the law of the land, just slightly touching on the Constitution, the US Constitution, the Arizona Constitution, and the state statutes and how they fit in our everyday life here in Arizona?
Well, okay, that's a pretty broad.
I was gonna say, you all want
You got 5 minutes.
Go for it.
How much time you got?
Just touch on it.
3
5
minutes.
minutes?
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I don't even know where to begin with that.
When that happens, you ask them to restate the question.
Oh,
Plead the
okay.
fifth.
Eileen handed me one of her mini printouts. Of course, we talked about the U.S. court system. Of course, the U.S. court system it is set up and established by the U.S. Constitution. If you read the U.S. Constitution, it tells you exactly how the federal court system is going to work. Now, Arizona has a constitution too. And basically, if you read the Arizona Constitution, you'll see that it almost mimics the U.S. Constitution. All of the equal rights and all of the bills of rights that you have under the U.S. Constitution are pretty much repeated in the Arizona Constitution. The Arizona Constitution actually gives you more rights than the U.S. Constitution does. You have a right to privacy in Arizona. You do not have the right to privacy under the U.S. Constitution. There is nothing in the U.S. Constitution that says you have a right to privacy. But the Arizona Constitution says you do, and that's important. That's why you can't put a camera in someone's restroom or their bedroom because of that constitutional provision.
Is privacy the same as a search issue?
It can be. There's a mix there. It's all tangled up.
Okay.
Yeah, when you talk about search and seizures and the right to privacy, they have to have probable cause to search your house.
They have to have a judge's
That's a
determination
A
of that.
warrant, don't they?
They have to have a district judge's or a superior court that has to sign. Of course, the JP can sign one too in an emergency, and they often do. The problem with JPs is that they're not lawyers for the most part, and a lot of them are not legally trained. And I won't name any names.
Tell me now.
Yeah. But they stamp search warrants all the time. In fact, you have a cop here, a sheriff's deputy, and he wants to search somebody's house. He'll call up on his telephone Ray Carroll, the local justice of the peace, and said, you know, I think I saw illegal activity going. Remember the big bust they had with the underage drinking here in Green Valley, where they busted 15 or 20 teenagers and a couple of parents for underage drinking in their homes?
Yes. That was the lady that made Kaylee cakes.
Yeah, the lady that used to make the Kaylee cake, she was so embarrassed, she packed up and left town.
And she made the best cakes.
And she
They
made-
did, they had the best cakes, the best, before she was a bad girl, because she did all of our daughter's cakes for her wedding and whatever. Her cakes were to die for.
And I remember specifically Ray Carroll bragging to me one time that he got the call from the Sarita or the sheriff's office, I forget which, but I think it was the sheriff, it was the sheriff's office because it's in Green Valley. And, you know, sheriff has a jurisdiction here in Green Valley, whereas Sarita is, they have their own police force.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, the deputy called him up and said, we have a report on a phone that there's underage drinking going on in such and such a house. And we need a search warrant. Well, I'm not sure that is reasonable grounds for a search warrant. Because once those cops go in your house, everything is fair game.
Yeah.
If it's an open view, it's fair game. You have a marijuana, this is when it was illegal, you had a marijuana cigarette laying in your ashtray, you had a firearm out there, and you're not supposed to have a firearm, you know, boy, it's a, you know, it just starts building up, and pretty soon, they've got you for everything. But anyway, making a long story short, Carroll approved the search warrant. They called in a dozen sheriff's deputies,
Yeah.
went and raided this house. They arrested something like 20 teenagers, and then the parents were upstairs asleep, and they arrested them for, you know, allowing teenagers to drink. And so, that's all it takes. And believe me, having dealt with federal judges, don't think they don't abuse that power too. Because I've seen them abuse it. I've seen them allow the FBI to tap people's phones for no reason whatsoever, just because the cop wanted it. And that's not the way the system's supposed to work. But that's the way it happens a lot of times.
Is searching the car the same as searching a house?
It is. They have to have reasonable suspicion that that car is involved in some kind of illegal activity to search your car. So if a cop stops you and they say, could I search your car?
No.
And if you say, well, yeah, sure, I got nothing to hide,
No.
big mistake, big mistake. And you don't ever want to give anybody the right to search your house or your car or any of your purse or anything else, because you don't know what's in there. And if they find anything illegal, you're in big trouble. And that's why lawyers say don't ever say yes.
So a lot of this stuff on TV on these crime shows where they're searching a car and they get harassed, that's not really valid.
That's and I've had cases. I represented a couple of guys one time that had burglarized an Army armory. They had the whole trunk of their car with machine guns that they had stolen out of this armory. An Army armory, okay. And they got stopped by the Texas Highway Patrol for making an illegal U-turn, okay? An illegal U-turn. And this patrolman said, I want to search your trunk. And the guy who was experienced criminal, they said, no, you don't have our permission. And he said, well, I don't give a damn. Get out of the car. I'm searching it. And he searched it. And he opened up the trunk, and there's all these machine guns. And so, So he arrested these two guys and took them to county jail. And the wife of one of them called me and she said, you know, my husband's in jail. And in Wichita Falls, Texas, you don't want to be in jail in Wichita Falls, Texas. There's certain cities you don't want to be in jail in, and that's one of them. That's where they used to take the old boys with long hair, and they give them a good haircut. But anyway, make a long story short, I filed a motion to suppress all of the evidence on the grounds there was no reasonable cause to search their trunk. And luckily, I had a judge that was sober.
Thank you for coming today.
If there was one thing I learned early in my law practice in Texas, is if you had a motion that you knew was going to be controversial, you always got the judge to hear it in the morning.
Before drinking.
Because most of the judges in those days, this was always years ago, were alcoholics. And you didn't want to catch them after 12 o'clock because they needed a drink, and they needed to drink bad. So you would catch them in the morning. And I caught him in the morning, and he listened to the facts, and he turned to the county attorney and said, you know, the guy's made an illegal U-turn. But where's the probable cause to search their trunk? There is none. Case dismissed. And that was the end of it.
What happened to the machine gun?
Yeah, well, now that's a good story right there. My client, I get loaded it. These guys were so arrogant. They came up to me after the judge released them and said, oh, you want our guns back? And I said, yeah, that's a great idea. You wouldn't get 5 blocks down the street before they stop you, and this time they got probable cause. And so I said, you get your butts out of town. Anyway, a couple of months later, I had another case in Wichita Falls. I went back down there, and one of the sheriff's deputies that was in the courtroom that day came up to me and he said, boy, you sure embarrassed the local sheriff's office down here. And, well, it wasn't the sheriff's office, it was the DPS and Department of Public Safety. Anyway, I said, well, whatever happened to all those machine guns? Well, he said, every DPS trooper in the Texas system now has their own machine gun. They called us all the troopers from that district and gave them one of those machine guns. And anyway, I thought, well, there you go, what can you do, you know? And they were stolen in an armory in Arkansas.
Oh my.
And the armory in Arkansas probably never knew what happened to their machine guns. But I can tell you right now, they're all over North Texas. So anyway, that's a good question about search warrant. So be careful about that. And because you never know what you've got laying around your house. You never know what you've got in your purse. And I'll never forget, Eileen and I were traveling one time, and we were going through the airport security, and he pulled Eileen over and he said, you've got a weapon in your purse.
I cannot believe you're telling this story.
And her face went white, and I thought, oh God, she's going to jail, because she has a concealed carry permit. And I thought, oh, she forgot to take her gun out of her purse. And so Eileen said, well, what is it? He said, it's the fingernail clippers.
Oh.
No fingernail clippers can go through security.
Yep. I thought you were gonna tell the other story, which was the embarrassing one. I had an underwire bra on. And they wouldn't let me go through.
Well, I wouldn't have done that.
So I don't wear underwear on bras anymore.
You didn't have all the TSA agents lined up to do a pat down?
I know, really.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman.
So remember, any kind of programs that you want or whatever, we'd really like to move forward with the rest of the year in variety, as well as concentrating on our elections.
Okay, before we do the draw, anybody need to get their tickets for the Queen of